Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, May 7th, 2020, and, well, it's time for another show. And I don't know, it doesn't even feel right to open the show exactly this way. It's a tough day to do a show. How you doing? Here's how you're doing. May 7th, 2020, mark it on your calendar. That's pretty much the end of the American experiment. Sorry. It was kind of a good run. It wasn't really all that good during George W. Bush years and brief respite during the Obama years, but just, pretty much as predicted, everything got worse. It was an 8-year respite during which Democrats agreed to normalize the operations of government, recognize the dictates of the Constitution, et cetera, and, there was reason to believe, if we weren't going to look backwards, as the Obama administration put it, and hold some people to account for their departure from the American experiment during the George W. Bush years, we were just going to get the same and worse from the next Republican who claimed to have been elected president under whatever circumstances. And lo and behold, I don't think anybody anticipated it was going to be Donald Trump and that this was going to come to an end so quickly. But it was. And here we are, and we now find ourselves in very much the same position that we predicted we would be in, a Republican leading us to the same and worse. So what triggers it this morning, I guess it might seem, if you're not looking at it quite right, like a small thing, but I guess we could, we'll get right to it. I know Greg will want to talk about it. The long and short of it is, AP is reporting that the CDC is now essentially being barred from doing its basic job. They were getting set to release, and were supposed to release last Friday, basically a guide for how to safely reopen those parts of the country and those parts of the economy that it might, at some point soon, we hope, become safe to reopen. And it was basically a guide. If you are operating a small business, if you are a faith leader of a religious community, if you are a school superintendent, whatever it is that you're doing, if you're looking to reopen, here are the guidelines for how to do that. Here are the signs you need to be looking for in terms of infection rates in your area, hospitalizations, etc., the number of deaths, the number of hospitalizations, the number of cases. You're going to look for this much decline. These are the things that will tell you that we've peaked and are on the downward slope of the curve. And then if it should fall to you as a leader in your community or a business owner or whatever it is, to reopen and to integrate your business or community or service back into the open economy, here's how you might do it. Here are the things to keep in mind in terms of safety and hygiene to make sure that you keep the curve on the downward slope. A how-to guide in getting us back to whatever version of normal it is that we're going to be returning to at some point. But here's the problem. Releasing such a report admits that we had a virus. It admits that we had a problem, and it admits that it's going to be difficult trying to get things back on track, and Donald Trump has calculated that all of that makes him look bad, and it might cost him his reelection, as it should, of course, but it might cost him his reelection in November, and so that can't be published. And as head of the federal government and commander of everything in the whole wide world, as President of the United States, he is exercising his power to block the CDC, an executive agency, though they might consider themselves an independent agency, who would guard their independence and stand up for their ability to do whatever it is, whether it's publish this or conduct any study, independent of the commands of the one person who claims the legal right to occupy the office of the President of the United States, the federal courts. What has Mitch McConnell been doing during the pandemic? Jam-packing the federal courts with 30-somethings who either don't know or care any different about how things are supposed to work and who will uphold such decisions. And so we find ourselves now facing the task of reopening the country, whatever that's supposed to mean, without any medical guidance whatsoever, so that Donald Trump, can run his re-election campaign, I guess, in his mind, unimpeded. I don't know how he's going to deal with the fact that many, many people are dead, and many, many people understand why those people are dead, and that might affect their votes. Maybe he just won't count them. Maybe he won't have the election. Lots of people love that conspiracy theory. But what we have in front of us very plainly and very clearly is the fact that Donald Trump has reached the point where we all have to choose, and it's him or us, essentially. He's not going to allow America to reopen its businesses and communities safely, because to do so means acknowledging that there was this relatively massive failure and many thousands of people died, and it was all done very poorly, and he doesn't want people thinking about that. And anything that reminds them is now forbidden. That's going to cost us our medical guidance in reopening the country. So it's him or us, and Donald Trump has chosen us. I mean, it's not that he's chosen to save us. It's who's going to die in all this? Who's going to have to go away for all of this to be okay in Donald Trump's mind? Donald Trump naturally has chosen us. We're the ones that have to go away in order for him to feel comfortable moving forward. And, the way it is in our country, unless you want to make waves, we're supposed to understand, and the Republicans demand that we understand, that we are supposed to choose us too. We are the ones who have to go away in order for things to be good for the guy who says he was elected president, and I'm not sure he was, but okay. So if you don't think it should be us and you think it should be him, then you've got a fundamental problem with the guy. And don't tell me, no one in this audience would tell me that it's Trump, not the rest of the Republicans. There are some good Republicans. The Republicans were given the chance under the law and under the Constitution to be rid of this person who is destroying our ability to survive, to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You want to put it that way. Put it put a flourish to it. They were given the chance to do it. They wouldn't do it. That suggests to me and to you, and it ought to suggest to everyone, there's no reason to believe any other Republican would be different in this office. You are signing your death warrant when you vote for Republicans for office at any level. It doesn't matter if it's dog catcher. The guy wants to be president eventually. Don't let it happen. So, it's a tough situation to be in. It's also a tough situation personally. I'm supposed to be consulting with my own religious community about how to reopen our operations when the time comes. And the whole job was go look at the CDC guidance on it, digest it, tell us what it says, and apply it to our situation. And I'm not going to be able to get that because Donald Trump wants to have an election on his terms, and we're all supposed to just ignore that we're dying so that he doesn't have to feel uncomfortable about it or have anybody armed with facts that they can challenge him with, et cetera, et cetera. So that's it. It was nice. America's done. I guess the regional coalitions will take over in his absence. And, we had a chance to do it nice, quiet, clean, no bloodshed. The one party decided that wasn't going to work for them. And so here we are. So I don't know. I guess we'll have one shot at it with an election. I don't know what this guy who says, this information no longer exists is going to do with being handed a massive defeat. But I guess we'll have to find out eventually, and we'll see. And if he leaves office, terrific, job well done. Don't give it to another Republican again until they've learned their lesson, and that may never happen. So, just leave it in our hands from now on. Thanks. We'll take it from here. And I'm done with this, and now I'll let Greg take it from here. He's probably got, something a little different in mind, but maybe not. I don't know. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning.
How's it up
what's
there
really
in the sovereign
interesting
state of
is to go back and look and see how Harry Seldon anticipated this more than 200 years ago when he said, a democracy if you can keep it.
Oh, yes. Did he do that? It was a long time ago, it seems.
Yeah, when the hologram comes up of him talking to the founders, that's pretty much what he told Ben Franklin, who then wrote it down. And
Well, that was a great
That's how we know
idea
it today.
on his part. It always feels like we have to wait a long time for these things to straighten themselves out.
Just like the polls.
Oh,
So,
yes.
we have a bunch of stuff going on. But, yeah, that lead story, I think, and I'm sort of annoyed at the nightly news, they do cover it. But they
Yeah.
don't necessarily cover it in proportion to what it deserves. They generally go with some happy story or some propaganda piece or some clickbait piece, like the rare Kawasaki's disease-like condition that children are undergoing because of coronavirus.
Yeah, I meant
that
to
was
talk
the lead
about that
story
today, too.
in NBC Nightly News yesterday, when it should have been a combination of the BARDA whistleblower talking about how the vaccine was squelched. They did
Yeah.
cover that, but much later. Or what we're doing this morning, which is the big AP story, the AP exclusive, which is about death panels, or if you will, task farce, as the
Okay.
as the New York Daily News puts it, because you love the tabloids, you have to love the tabloids.
It's a
Or
law now.
mission abandoned, the way I like to put it.
Ah.
So AP exclusive, administration shelves CDC guide to reopening the country, as you were just outlining. And here's the words, which should drive you nuts.
I love words.
It was supposed to be published last Friday, says AP, but agency scientists were told the guidance, quote, would never see the light of day, according to a CDC official who they don't name,
Isn't that
but if
amazing?
Nancy Messonnier was her name, it wouldn't surprise me. The official was not authorized to talk to reporters and spoke to the AP on conditions of anonymity. Now, I'm not trying to finger her to get her in trouble. I'm just reminding people that
Yeah,
back in February,
right.
she said not a question of if, a question of when, and we never heard from her again.
Yeah. Although the place is full
AP
of scientists. Could have been
The
anybody.
AP obtained a copy from a second federal official who was not authorized to release it, because if you want to find out anything from CDC, you have to talk to people not authorized to talk to reporters, or a second federal official who wasn't authorized to release it, because
Yeah.
that's the only way you could find out a goddamn thing with this
Yeah.
administration.
I guess occasionally you still will find somebody who's like, it really would be like literally deadly for thousands if I don't share this information. And I guess so they do.
Yep. The Trump administration has been closely controlling the release of guidance and information during the pandemic, and traditionally it's been the CDC's role to give the public and local officials guidance. During this one, however,
Yes.
the CDC has not had a regular pandemic-related news briefing in nearly 2 months.
Not
CDC
allowed.
Director Robert Redfield, who is a lowlife and really ought to resign, horribly disgraced
Put them against the
individual,
wall.
has been a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, but largely absent from public appearances. The dearth of real-time public information from the nation's experts has struck many current and former government health officials as dangerous. I love this quote. CDC has always been the public health agency Americans turn to in time of crisis, said Dr. Howard Koh, a Harvard professor and former health official in the Obama administration during the H1N1 swine flu pandemic in 2009. The standard in a crisis is to turn to them for the latest data and latest guidance and latest press briefing. This has not occurred, and everybody sees that. Yes, everybody does see that. We all know what's going on here. That's why it's so infuriating when the news doesn't cover it with the proper proportion that it deserves. Yes, we're learning about it because the news is covering it, but it ought to be the frickin' lead story every frickin' night until it's fixed.
Yeah. When did this story get printed? I am not
This one?
certain.
Last night.
Yeah, I mean, it was, it's updated anyway, like 24 minutes
But we
ago.
know
I mean, but-
Messonnier's been sidelined. We know Shookett's
Yeah.
been sidelined. We know Redfield screwed up testing.
maybe tonight.
We know that the BARDA guy was a whistleblower several days ago.
True.
We'll see how they handle this one tonight. But there's
hopefully
plenty of
better.
material, and it doesn't take this story to make it the lead story. CDC's been absent for months.
Yes. This is a sort of a triggering event, I suppose, and maybe it'll wake them up to what's going on. I mean, I wouldn't bet a whole lot on it.
There's the news, and then there's the public. Right now, I'm ranting at the news.
Okay,
But
that's
Daily
fair.
News
Go ahead.
editorial board here, task farce. Trump keeps the coronavirus panel open even as he undermines it at every turn, which is true. Okay, and then let's turn to the public and see how they're responding to it. But before we do that, before we get into the polling, which, of course, you know I love the polling,
Right.
remind me, because I'm getting old, did we talk about this wonderful Evan Osnos article from The New Yorker, how Greenwich Republicans learned to love Trump?
I don't think that we did.
Because you were just talking about the fact that you can't just blame Trump, you
Yes.
got to blame Republicans.
Yes.
And this is a really nice article about how they got seduced
Hit one over
and
the head
turned
if you
to
find
the dark
one.
side.
Okay. Yes.
And it's very long. It's very
Oh.
good.
All right.
But he says, to understand the president's path to the 2020 election, look at what's happened and what he's provided to the country's executive class. And he points out that in Greenwich, where he grew up,
Yeah.
Trump's rise was less a hostile takeover than a joint venture. And he talks about the Republican, country club Republicans like Prescott Bush and where they come from and so on and so forth. But in the end, in this very, very long article, as he details the chronicles of how this happened, he gets to the end and says, as Americans have reckoned with the origins of our political moment, the Trump years, the fury on all sides, the fraying of a common purpose, and just look at CDC and what's happened to it to understand all of that.
Yes.
We've tended to focus on the effects of despair among members of the working class who felt besieged by technology, globalization, immigration, and trade, the economic anxiety of Midwesterners, right? Mm-hmm. But that ignores the effects of seclusion among members of the governing class. He's talking about those who live behind gated communities.
I see.
Who live in Greenwich but work in the towers of New York City, who help disfigure our political character by demonizing moderation and enfeebling the basic functions of the state. And I would add unions. Because after all, we all know that labor is a cost on the balance sheet, and you really want to keep that as low as possible.
Right.
We, or they, Evan writes, depending upon where you stand, receded behind gracious walls. On the ground where I grew up, some of America's powerful people have championed a version of capitalism that liberates wealth from responsibility. They embraced a fable of self-reliance, except when the fable's untenable, a philosophy of business that leaches more wealth from the real economy than it creates. Just look at the meatpacking plants for what I'm talking about here, folks. And a vision of politics that forgives cruelty as the price of profit. In the long battle between the self and service, we have for the moment settled firmly on self. To borrow a phrase from a neighbor in disgrace, we stopped worrying about, quote, the moral issue here, end quote.
This does sound good.
And so you're talking about not only the enablers in Republican media, the Hugh Hewitts of the world, not only the enablers in Congress, like the Mitch McConnells of the world, you're talking about their bankers, their bankroll people, the people who give the money so that those folks can stay in power. So that's why you're talking about Greenwich, Connecticut, and the I don't know what to call them, the Gatsby class.
Yeah, I think
this is the Great Gatsby, except in real life.
Yeah, well, it is, and it's been a long time coming, I guess.
Too many Toms and Daisies, That's all I'm saying.
Well, Donald Trump does seem to sort of embody that in a weird way. And it's funny that we even think about things in terms of, well, gee, they came to accept him. He's an outsider. He's always been rough around the edges, and old money never really accepted him, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know. It's been a long enough time
old money saw a way to make money. That was the bottom line, and that's all that mattered.
My mind keeps going back to my younger days, when you turn on the television in the 80s, and like the most popular show in the early evening hours being Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. It feels like a turning point to me, where it was such a terrible show on a number of levels.
I thought you were going to cite Michael J. Fox's show.
Yeah, well, that too, actually. I mean, that was right at the same time when there was a character in a major big-time hit network sitcom on once a week, that the whole premise was that he was a Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous aspirant, a Gordon Gekko teenager, and that this was
living in a home with hippie parents.
Right.
And, isn't that interesting? And let's see what kind of conflict they get into next week.
And that was a relatable enough sort of situation and character that it could be a major part of a hit series was, I guess, an early warning. But at the time, it was just like, look how frustrated these poor hippie parents are going to be.
Right. So let's talk some polling here.
Now they're dead.
We'll see how it's playing with the public.
By the way, let me just I guess I should put the capstone on that. The answer is that the Keatons just died of COVID-19. And Alex is at Mar-a-Lago.
Right.
So,
Alex didn't die, but his parents did.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
and Alex is at Mar-a-Lago,
that's the outcome of the
so
show.
far he
In case
hasn't
you were
gotten
wondering. That's the aftermash of what was the
It's
hell
nothing
was the name
personal.
of
It's
the
just business.
show? I forget already. All right. Well, anyway, yeah, that's basically it. God.
Right, but basically, it's important to sacrifice Granny because I need the money.
Yeah, and right, and if you didn't know, that's such an old trope, and we've been talking about sacrificing Granny since Republicans accused Democrats of wanting to do it back in the early
Death
ACA
panels.
days, but we've forgotten.
Sarah Palin's death panels. Don't
Yeah,
forget about that.
right. And Granny was we had a different picture in mind now. It's important. I know it seemed frivolous and like it was a joke, but who's Granny now? It's the Keatons. They were just regular American parents. They're middle-aged. They're not Granny. No, now they're Granny.
No, now they're Granny.
Grandma, and that's the end. That's how the series ends. They die of COVID-19, and that's the end of Family Ties, everybody.
One of the things I was talking about for the past week or two, based on the polling, is the fact that seniors 65 and over are losing faith with the Republican in the White House and the Republican administration and Senate races all over the country. And so we have some data on that, of course. But I said, these over 65s are the new soccer moms, and everybody on Twitter pointed out, the soccer moms are now over 65.
Right.
And so, yes, they
same
are.
Point. Yeah.
They're not only the new soccer moms, they're the old soccer moms.
That's absolutely true. The soccer moms are going to be soccer grandmoms in about 8 years.
And the security dads.
Yeah.
They're all the 65ers who are losing faith. So just the Aaron Astor historian points out the course of economic recovery will be determined by how safe consumers feel venturing out in public again. The economic disaster is driven by the public health crisis. Government should prioritize getting the pandemic under control and supporting those financially hurt, which is a laudable goal. That's what Germany is doing. And they're getting ready to reopen because they did it right. And Aaron adds, it's inexcusable that we're 3 months from the first CDC testing efforts and we still can't produce enough tests to manage a recovery. That's because the CDC screw up. And that's the major reason why Redfield should resign. But the other reason he should resign is because his agency's been silenced. And that's the way to get him unsilenced. He should release the thing and say, fire me.
Yes.
Of course, he won't because he's a lowlife. But if he weren't, that's what he should do. If he had moral courage, if he had a backbone, that's what he would do. And you know what? That's what I would do if I were there.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I don't know what you'd be holding out for. Well, maybe I can get a sticker.
What can you get, Dr. Brooks? What can you get?
Yeah, a wash your hands reminder sticker that we can put on the mirrors in bathrooms in elementary schools.
Yeah, you can pull some old WIN, whip inflation now, buttons on, or you can do a just say no button and and hope the whole thing goes away.
Yes. Well, that now that we're aware that that's the plan and that we were right and that the plan actually is that we hit the 60,000 mark that they said we were going to hit, and now the pandemic is over.
70,000 and counting. We're going to hit the 100,000 mark they said was aspirational.
Right. It's going to be 75.
That was their aspirational goal. We're going to hit it.
Yeah. Right. That was supposed to be the good job mark, although they did eventually say, well, between 100,000 and 200,000, which, by the way, look at how much playing he's doing with lives.
Maybe aspirational goal, the way we're going. Yeah. So this is Morning Consult this morning. Voters are growing critical of Trump's coronavirus response, but Biden hasn't convinced the public he's better equipped to handle the recovery. And more of that with the Monmouth poll. We'll probably do that after the break.
Here, being not Trump is enough.
Yeah, that's exactly right, because it's a referendum on him, and that's what the Monmouth poll says. However, Morning Consult says the slide in Trump's approval has not contributed to an improvement in perceptions of how his presumptive challenger, Vice President Joe Biden, would be able to handle the outbreak. He's merely winning the election.
Yeah, that's all.
How can you see how Biden would handle it when you can't see Biden? Voters continue to believe social distancing is worth the potential economic cost. 72% of registered voters agree Americans should continue to social distance for as long as is needed. And here's other key findings this week. 44% of registered voters said the loans from the Small Business Administration's PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, have been awarded unfairly.
Hooray.
The majority of U.S. adults, 64%, would get a vaccine, but 14% say they would not. They go to Michigan and use guns to try to intimidate the legislature, by the way. Mm-hmm. And 22% are unsure. I'm sure a lot of those 22% would come along. This week, if CDC would tell them to, but of course they're not allowed to. This week, a range of leaders and institutions charged with steering the coronavirus outbreak response hit or tied their lowest points in net approval since Morning Consult began tracking in March. A decreasing share of Americans believe there's a severe health risk in their community. That is strictly because of how it's covered in the news, and that's the news's fault. However, as I said yesterday, more people know someone who has it or who have died, so that's going to change. So people think it's getting better, but it's not getting better, and then that will change when they realize the reality. 49% of U.S. adults said the general stress and anxiety has been challenging, and 32% say the same about personal finances. 12% of Americans say they might not be able to pay for food if social distancing lasts another month. So what does the administration do? They're trying to get rid of food stamps.
Oh, of course,
Trump
that would be the answer.
poor marks on efforts on testing a vaccine. Consumer sentiment stabilized because people think it might get better, not because of how it is right now. 79% of voters say they think a second wave of coronavirus cases is likely. 8% of Americans know somebody personally who's died of the virus. That's going to grow. 30% know somebody who's caught it. As Trump increasingly, that's from a different poll, as Trump increasingly signals interest in prioritizing economic interests, America's senior citizens are growing critical of his approach. That's the part I want to finish before the break. This one that says older Americans sour on Trump's handling of the outbreak, and they really have. By nearly 6-to-1 margin, people 65 years old and older say it's more important for the government to address the spread of coronavirus than it is to focus on the economy. And net approval of Trump's handling among U.S. adults is now in not all adults. Net approval is dropping.
Okay, I can accept that as a number.
It's still positive. It's negative for over 65, -1, and it's positive for all adults, +3. Again, on the soft positives, they give credit to whoever's in the White House because they want him to succeed. But 65-year-olds and over are losing patience.
Well, they have less time to wait, so, I can't blame them for it. And, of course, as it happens, it turns out that they're correct, which might be the very most dangerous thing you can do, tell the boomers they're right, but they are. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio, and we continue to roll forward. So far, as far as I can tell, the shades are down. There could be federal troops outside the house. Not really sure. Doubt it. I don't think that they're awake in the one-man federal government probably hasn't rolled out of bed to discover what's going on just yet. So.
Right. Well, they come to your house to take you away. I just want to know if, in addition to the sunglasses and an earpiece, whether they're wearing a mask.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
Very important before you get dragged off to report that to us, please.
Yes, right. You can't take me anywhere. You're not wearing a mask.
Exactly.
I know my rights.
I've got CDC guidelines right here. No, you don't. They weren't published, and that's why we're taking you.
Yeah, that's it. They've come to repossess them. How did you get those?
How did you get them? They're 17 pages. How did AP get them? So, today's polling, in addition to the Morning Consult poll, I just mentioned in passing here the MSN tracker because I love to watch that for trends. Today, it's Trump at 36, which is up for him.
Well.
He was at 35 yesterday. And disapprove is at 61. That's down for him. It was at 62 yesterday. And you say, oh, the MSN tracker, it's a bunch of garbage. Nobody else is showing that. Well, actually, as it turns out, if you look at the tracking poll from Navigator, which publishes Tuesday through Saturday, it's got the exact, not the exact same numbers, but the exact same pattern.
Okay.
In terms of the jaws of death there, where they, sort of open wide and then start to close on you. And Trump's approval there is 42 and disapproval is 56. So, not crazy. The disapproval numbers on the MSN tracker have always been in line with everything, including the 538 aggregate, which doesn't include the MSN poll, but does include Navigator polling. It's just that the approval numbers are a bit all over the place because people really don't know what to make of Trump. If you push him, Navigator has found that 37% approve him and another 13% are willing to say they hope he gets approval. It's a soft approve, and it doesn't translate to the effect of having people strongly like him or approve of what he's doing. And both for the pandemic, they noted yesterday in Navigator, and for general approval ratings as a whole, the strong disapprove is generally twice the approve. That wasn't true in the beginning of the response to coronavirus, but it is now. And people are thinking that Trump really hasn't done his job. But what they're much more concerned about in today's Navigator polling is the possibility of a second wave, because everything that Trump is doing has shown that he doesn't have any clues to what to do with the first wave other than dismiss it and say it's fake news and that's not happening, except, of course, it really does. And so that doesn't help with anything.
Yeah, true. And I don't know, I'm starting to, there's no putting it back in the bottle at this point, but even polling people about a second wave, as though the first wave were done.
But they're getting information, despite the fact that Trump would like to talk about something else. There's another AP story today by Jonathan Lamar and Will Wessert. Face masks make a political statement in the era of coronavirus. And the whole idea, basically, Trump has told aides he doesn't want people wearing a face mask because that's not going to help the economy.
It's weak. Right. I'm not certain how it's hurting the economy, but I mean, it seems to me like, for us who believe in the science of reopening safely, wearing a face mask means you look ready to go out there and participate in whatever limited amount of commerce we're allowed to have.
Well, let me quote you two of the biggest a-holes in Washington on this.
All right.
Let's start with Trump. Trump has told advisors that he believes wearing one would send the wrong message, according to one administration, and two campaign officials not authorized to publicly disclose private conversations, because the only way you find out about something in this administration is to have people tell you what they're not supposed to tell you and show you what they're not supposed to show you.
And then Trump denies
the president said doing so would make it seem like he's preoccupied with health instead of focused on reopening the nation's economy, as if they're different. Right. Which, as aides believe, is the key to his reelection chances. So he wants Granny to die because he wants to be reelected, and he's willing to make that sacrifice. I just want you to know just what a good guy he is. And then the second biggest a-hole in Washington, I don't know if you want to guess while I find the exact reference.
Well, technically it would be Mike Pence because that's what the Constitution says. But
yes, but in actuality it's Rand Paul who said, who knows what the truth is on masks.
Yeah, how would anybody
Paul already
know?
contracted the virus and believes he's no longer contagious. I don't have to wear a mask. And Trump says, I get tested every 15 minutes. You little people, that's your problem. Just pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and that's becoming a big problem in itself, too. We'll see if we get around to that issue. He gets tested, and who else does? Maybe nobody.
All right, so new Monmouth polling.
Okay.
Biden currently has the support of 50% of registered voters, and Trump has the support of 41%. Another 3% say they would vote for an independent candidate, and 5% are undecided. This represents a slightly wider lead for the Democrat than in previous Monmouth polls, 48-44 in April, 48-45 in March. Basically, Trump's numbers are dropping, and Biden's are slightly increasing. This despite the fact there's been this whole to-do about the Tara Reade accusation, which this covers in detail, and I will in a minute, but I want to finish this thought here. When Republican Justin Amash of Michigan is added to the mix as a libertarian candidate, Biden gets 47, Trump gets 40, Amash gets 5. So he takes a point or two but doesn't change the trajectory. During the last presidential cycle, Monmouth points out, Gary Johnson started his presidential bid as a libertarian with 11% support. Amash starts with 5. Okay. His poll standing dropped to 5% by October. That is Gary Johnson, and he ended up earning 3.
Okay.
Traditionally, third-party candidates drop as you get closer to the election. If Amash is getting 5 and that drops, he's not going to turn out to be a factor.
Yeah. I mean, he could grow and then drop, certainly.
Well,
okay.
Patrick Murray, the excellent pollster Patrick on Twitter, director of the independent Monmouth University Polling Institute, says there's not as much of an appetite for a third option as there was 4 years ago. Remember, folks, this is not 2016. It's too early to tell whether Amash will have an impact, but if this election ends up being as close as 2016, even a small showing can have a crucial impact, but this poll isn't showing it that close.
Okay.
Right? Biden's lead continues to build, even as overall opinion of him remains soft. It's possible that recent headlines about a sexual assault claim may have had an impact, but most voters still see this election mainly as a referendum on Trump, said Murray, and that's really the key. Okay? Most voters, 86%, have heard about an allegation that Biden may have sexually assaulted a woman who worked in his U.S. Senate office in the 90s. This question was added to the poll after Biden publicly addressed the issue last Friday. The electorate is divided on the validity of the allegation. 37% say it's probably true, 32% say it's probably not true, and 31% have no opinion, and partisan lines, of course. Among voters who say the sexual assault is probably not true, the vast majority, 79%, support Biden over Trump. 79 to 14. Among those who feel it is true, 59% back Trump and 32% still support Biden. Among those who have no opinion, 45% support Trump and 43% support Biden. So those who have no opinion on the allegation have no opinion on the presidential race. Surprise, surprise.
I guess. I mean, why would anything be important?
What it's going to take you for you actually to come to a conclusion, they have no opinion on that.
Oh, that too. Well, what would it take to convince you?
But, that's basically, you have to understand.
I thought that might be real. Why not? I mean, really, no opinion at all? Like, if it's a good thing or a bad thing? Well,
right.
I don't know. What was she wearing? I don't know. What would make that person
Some states have already expanded vote by mail access for this year's elections. 18% of the nation's voters say they regularly vote by mail now, but half say they're either very or somewhat likely to cast this fall. That includes 69% of those who live in states where the majority of the vote is already cast by mail, 45% of those in states that have lower but do not require an absentee excuse, and 35% in those states that require a specific excuse.
Yes.
So people are okay with voting by mail, as it turns out. Generic ballot, Democrats up by 10. That's similar to the polling advantage Democrats held at a similar point in the last midterm. Actually, it was 9 in the last midterm. So Democrats went on to win the House by 8, 53 to 45. So we're doing fine with the generic. Really, people are not happy with Republicans. But here, when you dig into the Monmouth stuff, Stu Rothenberg found the nugget that I think is just fascinating.
Okay.
Yeah, you ready? You sitting down?
Yes. Yeah, I am doing that.
Mask on?
That doesn't necessarily...
You have your virus checker and protector on your computer? Okay, here it says, check out the divide in the new Monmouth poll between those with a college degree and those without one.
Okay, even if it's from Monmouth College.
Even if. Okay. So, Trump wins those with no degree. I think he won them in the last election too, but not by this. Trump wins with those in the degree 47-44. If you don't have a college degree, you're for Trump over Biden 47-44.
Okay. What if you're trying to get one?
That's
but you're not
close.
Done yet? Okay.
That's way closer than it was. Okay. And those are not necessarily good numbers for him in that regard. But if you have a college degree,
yes,
what would you guess the lead is for Biden?
11.
35.
35. That's higher than
63 to 28.
Several. That is pretty good.
That is amazing.
Yeah, I guess so. So
now,
free college.
Of those college degree people, just ask yourself this question. All right? It's not in the poll, but just ask yourself this question. Biden wins those with a college degree by 63 to 28. As this pandemic rolls on, what percentage of those do you think is going to change their mind? And say, no, actually, in the end, I'm for Trump.
Can you just do that, or do you have to go to college? Yeah, I would guess so.
Close to zero. And I would say it's more likely that Trump loses people from the no degree than he wins back people from the college degree.
I would guess
so. Big trouble in the fall. Well, you know that because we've been talking about this.
Right.
But these numbers just really push that point. I mean, how do you win when you can't, you can barely hold your own with non-college and you completely get destroyed by college?
I don't know. I feel like I was completely destroyed by college.
Yeah, so that's amazing.
I don't know. Yeah, well, that is pretty amazing. And I mean, it's
Now, to give you an idea of the environment, let's talk about
Should've been able to
Colorado
guess.
just for a minute. This is a Senate race.
Colorado.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right. John Hickenlooper, Cory Gardner.
Yeah.
All right. The poll released by Montana State University on Tuesday has Hickenlooper leading Gardner by 17 points.
Okay.
In the presidential race, Biden leads Trump by 18 points.
Oh. That's
Colorado voters are negative on Trump's coronavirus response, with 54% saying they disapprove and just 34% approving. Now, people made fun of this poll and say, well, it's way, 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 way too democratic. It's, you're not accounting for this. You're not accounting for that. What about education? What about this? What about that? Well, as it turns out, there was more than just that one poll from Colorado. Keating Research has Biden beating Trump by 19 in Colorado.
Well, whose poll was the first one?
And
Did you
Keating
say Montana?
has Hickenlooper beating Gardner by 18 points there too. I mean, there's
I guess that's
just poll after poll
that'll
after
have
the
to do.
Senate showing these close races aren't really that close, and you can criticize this poll or that poll. They're all showing the same thing.
all right. I mean,
how can you say that? That's ridiculous that the MSN tracker says Trump is only at 35 or 36%. That's ridiculous. That would translate to a 10 or 15 point lead or maybe more. And, of course, we all know it's going to be close like 2060. Well, what if it's not?
Again, anything's possible in an era where we don't have a federal
government. You got to include
and
that in the possibility and saying, look, there's only two possibilities. One is that it's a really close race and Biden wins, or it's a really close race and Biden loses. And there are no other possibilities. While a Trump blowout is extraordinarily unlikely, a Biden blowout is actually well within the margins of what we're seeing in these polls.
Yeah.
It may turn out to be close in the end.
True.
But
always
the
could happen.
Variation, the range of what we could see includes a Biden blowout. And you got to start including that in your punditry. There is no data. There are no data. There are no datum to show that there's a Trump blowout.
Datums, I think.
But you put the datums together, and there could be possibly a Biden blowout, again, if the trajectory continues the way we're going. You'd have to change the trajectory for Trump to win.
Well, I think we've explained that
can happen, but, people just won't talk about it. I don't even want to see that. Don't show that to me. You can't say that. Everybody knows it's wrong. Well, actually, we can't say it, and it might happen, and that's not a prediction because you have to consider the fact that other things can happen.
Yes.
And then it might turn out to be that close race. But even in a close race, Biden could win. So now we start having the pundits rewrite history. Okay. So Trump's going to get blown out, maybe. Maybe he's losing. But that's, of course, before the pandemic happened. He was obviously on his way to winning. Now this changed everything. Can't blame him. It's all the pandemic. No. Actually, he was on his way to losing narrowly prior to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're rewriting history by saying, well, he was obviously going to win, except for this happened.
Yeah, I mean,
people have hated Trump from the time he was elected. He has never been popular. Never.
That is all true. And we should get the history right. Although, again, if he's completely destroyed at the ballot box and people want to say, aha, it was the pandemic, I might grant them the allowance to do that.
You can say that. You're wrong, but you have the liberty to say that.
It will be important for others to get the history right later. It'll be a good lesson for, how to remain in power with a party that believes in science. We'll want to know all of that.
Right.
But I guess for a little while I will allow people to lie and say it was all the pandemic and that we hadn't, he hadn't been on the verge of impeachment before that.
Right. The guy actually was doing so badly he got impeached.
Yeah. And although he's
what's
helping.
What's the effect of impeachment? Eventually, it's going to be at the ballot box. We all know that.
Yeah.
So,
well, it'd have to be.
Oh, we forgot that conversation ever happened because we just wanted to forget that ever happened.
Yeah, he's helping everybody who's willing to become confused about that by confusing the timeline himself. But I don't know whether that's a plan or he's just a dumb guy.
So in the remaining minutes, I'm just going to talk a little bit about science and culture.
I like them both. We should keep them. Yes. Your opinion?
So there's this really good infectious disease doc, and I apologize in advance, especially to anybody who is listening who actually speaks Turkish, because I'm going to mangle this name.
I apologize because Turkish is weird. Yes.
But in order to pronounce it
weird, yes,
properly, or anything close to what an American might do.
Let's see. Where is this name?
The name is Mugecevik. That's
okay. Now with your other eye,
it's Mugecevik.
Okay.
All right, and that's about as close as I could do. Chevik like in tchotchke, right?
Sure.
So
Joni and
Mugec is the there's an umlaut over the U, but of course Americans can't do umlauts.
Oh yeah.
So
okay, I found
she's an infectious disease doc, and she
Turkish
is at
really
St. Andrews in Scotland.
Really?
And she was talking about the pandemic, and I came across this really interesting thread that she did, two of them. As a matter of fact, one of them was simply saying, the R0 for the infodemic is 12. That's the way the information gets transmitted, and anything over 1 is bad. Measles is 15, and false information in this pandemic, she's saying, is 12. And so she put together a whole list of experts you should actually listen to instead. So that's where I first caught her tweets. And then she had this tweet storm here describing about transmission dynamics. So I wanted to pronounce her name properly. So I pulled up something from the BBC where she was interviewed, and she's got this lovely Scottish accent. But is a very, very formal interview.
Wow. Yeah, okay.
And I didn't quite catch the way the name was pronounced properly, so I looked for some other videos, and I found several where she's being interviewed, including the BBC. She's being interviewed in what sounds like Turkish.
Oh.
And that's where I heard the pronunciation of her name.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's why I was looking. But what struck me is how comfortable she was and relaxed speaking to the Turkish interviewers, and how formal she looked when she was doing English.
Well, that's
if English isn't your first language and you have to concentrate on what you're saying, you don't get a chance to be yourself and just relax and make jokes and so on and so forth. So the difference between that, of course, English speakers alone aren't really going to get that. You have to go looking for it. So I just thought it was really fascinating and a reminder that if you have to try to do two things in your head at once, it's hard. It's hard enough, doing podcasts where you have to remember what you're thinking in English as your first language.
Right. What?
Well, we know that.
Where were we?
So,
yes.
What she said, anyway, I just thought that was interesting. So, again, apologies for mangling her name, but hope I made up for it by talking about the fact that if you interview her in her native language, she's actually really comfortable with this. Okay. A lot of discussion, she says, recently about transmission dynamics, most of which are extrapolated from viral loads and estimates. What does contact tracing and community testing data tell us about actual probability of transmission, the infection rate, or the high-risk environments, or age? So she's got a thread on this, and she quotes multiple studies.
One's
and I'm going to
Chinese.
Skip down all of them to number 15 or so.
Okay, I'll go with you.
Because that's where she summarizes. So the first 14, she's just quoting like 13, 14 studies that she used to come to this conclusion. And she says, in summary, while the infectious inoculum required for infection is unknown, are you sicker if you get a bigger load? Coughed in your face.
I see.
These studies indicate that close and prolonged contact is required for COVID-19 transmission. The risk is highest in enclosed environments, household, long-term care facilities, and public transport. Think New York City subways. Mm-hmm. Right? They're cleaning them every night. So what? That's when they're empty.
Yeah.
It's when they're full. That's the risk.
Right. Well, yeah. You're not safe because it was cleaned yesterday. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. You're safer if you don't clean them and don't let anybody on them than you are if you clean them every 15 minutes and they're full and packed. I'm just saying. High infection, and that's why some of this is for show. Okay. High infection rates seen in household, friend, and family gatherings. Transport suggests that closed contacts, and congregation is likely the key driver of productive transmission. So think of the beaches. It's different than closed contacts in a subway. Okay. Casual, short interactions are not the main driver of the epidemic, although keep social distancing.
Right.
The point
Keep it
there
that
is
way.
that when you start to relax, if you properly can, because you're following the CDC guidelines that you don't know about, and you find out that, yeah, there really is a 14-day drop in cases, and so you can afford to relax and loosen up a little bit.
I don't know how you find
That's
that
going to be
out.
outdoor activity. That's going to be golfing and beaches. It's not necessarily going to be in-store retail.
Wrestling.
Increased
wants to
rates
when
of
that's
infection
happening.
seen in enclosed and connected environments is in keeping with high infection rates seen in megacities, deprived areas, and shelters, and prisons, I would add. Okay, strongly shaped by crowding. Although limited, these studies so far indicate that susceptibility to infection increases with age, highest above 60. We've sort of known that. Growing evidence suggests children are less susceptible, are infrequently responsible for household transmission, and are not the main drivers of this epidemic. That obviously has implications for opening up grade schools, primary schools. Finally, these studies indicate that most transmissions caused by close contact with a symptomatic case, highest risk within first 5 days of symptoms. That's like flu. You can be infectious the day before, but you're mostly infectious the day of and the first couple of days after.
All right.
So that seems to be the case here as well. You can be infectious prior to getting symptoms, and there's the asymptomatic spreader. But for the most part, you're highest risk if you actually do have symptoms. That's why it drives me crazy when people say, I didn't feel good, I got a test, it's going to be back in a day. In the meantime, I'm going shopping.
Yes, okay.
Oh, that's exactly the wrong thing to do. To note, this preprint suggests that most infections are not asymptomatic during infection. In other words, you're eventually going to get sick. You don't stay asymptomatic, according to at least one of the studies. In conclusion, and that's important, remember the Diamond Princess study that talked about how many people were asymptomatic? Well, they were asymptomatic at the time they walked off the ship, but they didn't follow them well enough to know how many of them were eventually going to get sick.
Yeah, we're still
And
not
when
clear
they
on that.
modeled it, remember models? When they modeled it, it was really a relatively small percentage who were going to stay asymptomatic. I don't remember, but it was something like 14%, as opposed to half of them were asymptomatic. Well, they were half asymptomatic at the time they left the ship, but most of those are going to get sick.
I guess.
So cautionary. This data and interpretation is based on the available evidence. As of May 4th, our understanding might change based on community testing, lifting lockdown measures. That's why it's so important to do the contact tracing that the public health people keep talking about.
Yeah.
They keep saying things like, it's really important you do contact tracing. Why? So you can find out what happens to asymptomatic people. So you can find out what happens to people who are exposed by somebody who was really sick and they happened to have dinner at a 14-person table in the middle of the restaurant next to the air conditioner. That's where you really want to trace down how is this stuff spread. So she says, while we have limited data, similar high-risk transmission patterns can be seen in other crowded and connected indoor environments, office spaces, workplace environment, packed restaurants and cafes, cramped apartment buildings. We need to redesign our living and working spaces. Maybe the open office isn't such a great idea. And rethink how to provide better ventilated living and working environments for those who live in deprived and cramped areas. Cruise ships, baby, don't take them.
They got specials running
Want
now. You
to
can
open
get a
up
coupon.
again? Yeah, good. As Tony Fauci would say, look, I'm not going to rule on cruise ships, but I would never go on one.
They've been a problem for a long time. It has not
Avoid
been
close,
coronavirus.
sustained contact indoors and in public transport, and maintain personal hygiene. So you can do this, you can open up, but you can do it sensibly. And yeah, you should wear a mask. And just because Trump wants to be a manly man and not wear a mask, so he sends the right message to his death panel people, because he's the head of a death cult. Just because of that doesn't mean you have to do it.
Yes, he did wear his safety goggles while he was in the factory, which is
Over his mouth?
He should have. It would have been a great opportunity.
And he could have put the mask over his nose. I mean, for all the way that he's approaching this, that would pretty much symbolize exactly what's going on.
I guess.
So anyway, that's my summary and rant for today. I'm really upset about CDC. Somebody there really needs to leak this and make a point of it. I don't know what the hell they're thinking.
I don't know. I guess they think having a job is a big deal, even if they can't do it. Money for nothing is not a terrible option, but if you want to save lives,
out of work, you'd be out of work too. I have a feeling though that if you did that, people would hire you. I have a feeling you have skills. I have a feeling that you have something.
I'll tell you what,
that
we
you
will GoFundMe help you
make
out.
$1 gazillion with your book. I mean, just do it.
True. There is always that. Do the tell-all book. Tell it all then, and just publish it really quickly. So, one question I was supposed to ask you, and I know you mentioned
about how Axl Rose got in a fight with Steve Mnuchin.
That's exactly it. Who do you like in that fight?
Yeah, I'll take Axl.
All right. Well, you know what? I'll ask you off air on Twitter later on, because we're at you got to go. You got to go live your life. You can't be.
What's your question? Go ahead. What's your question?
No, it was just, you addressed it in the beginning. What's happening with the kids? Is this is something that we just are like, that's happening to like 10 kids and don't worry so much?
There's a really small number of kids. If your kid looks really sick and looks like they have the measles, please see a doctor or at least call them about it. On the other hand, it's a small number of children, and the larger, bigger picture is whether or not children as a general class are winding up spreading the virus to other people. If they're not, that has implications for what we do at school.
Yes.
So you have to collect that information. That's why case contact tracing is so important.
All right. I kind of got the feeling that this seems like really literally a handful of kids, although then when I saw it being replicated.
Well, they have the same story and the same kid on the nightly news 3 nights in a row.
Is that what's going on? Okay.
Yeah, it's the same kid. It's the same story I saw the night before.
I mean, I feel bad for the kid.
And you're making it the lead story. Why are you doing this?
Care, but okay. Yeah, well, it's a new thing. And
it's an editorial decision, and instead they didn't cover the BARDA guy, and tonight they damn well better cover the CDC and what's going on there.
I cannot. Okay. I understand what they're doing. It's not a great story, but okay. What people ought to, I guess, take away from it is no, don't quite panic about that one yet. But
Nope, don't panic about it.
Do what you're doing. Keep an eye on your kids. If they're sick, do something, and if they're not,
there's a thing called Kawasaki's. It looks like that. We've treated this before. We've seen this before. It's pretty rare. Okay. It's certainly serious. But the vast majority of children are not having this issue.
Okay. So, I think the thing to do is I'll pass out the articles. Everyone can read them. And you have this warning. Probably not going to be a widespread phenomenon. But you want to know about it? We've got some good reports on it. And I'll share them. I've been meaning to ask about it.
Put it in the same file with Rona toes.
Okay.
Like your toes can
yes, right. We did warn people about that stuff.
No, but not everybody's having that.
Okay, fair enough. All right, I think I understand that now. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your attempt at the Turkish names as well. We'll talk to you Monday. Have a good weekend.
See you then.
All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And if for some reason the feed went crazy and the wrong stream went out other than our break music, then you would have heard just the most fantastic 1 minute, I guess, of the show. And Greg just letting loose and letting you know how he really feels. I was thinking about this. And we have to isolate what happened during that minute. It's got the music in the background, so it's real, it's hip and you can dance to it and all that. But I could probably sell that as a subscription special, and boy, you'd get your money's worth out of that one. I'm thinking about that. Maybe we ought to do something extra for the show where the uncensored 5-minute summation of everything that went on that day. We could probably raise some big bucks with that one. There's no reason why, of course, we can't just have that on the air, but I don't know. We're still just, we're hidebound. Here we are trying to tell everybody not to be bound by tradition, and you should just come out and admit that Donald Trump ought to be deposed from office and just say so, and then we censor ourselves nonetheless. I don't know. Maybe it's a morning thing. I really have no idea what's driving it. But it's fun to hear what goes on in the commercials. The only thing that has to happen is you have to be either Greg or me in order to do it. And maybe Justice can hear those things too. But for $5.99 a month, you can hear it now too. I don't know what you would charge for something. What would be a decent amount to ask for, and that people would pay to hear Greg Dworkin say the F word? He knows the word, and he uses it plenty, but okay, that was fun, and he really let loose on that. But what can you do? I mean, how do you control your emotions when you are watching the collapse of the United States, let's say, and you live there, and you're pleased with it so far and wanted it to continue? It's really been it's been rough. He's very upset about the CDC story, and ought to be. It got me. Even before I heard from him, I knew this was going to be a real game changer, as Donald Trump likes to say. All right, what are we going to do with the rest of this stuff? Where to go from here? I guess I'll talk. I can talk a little bit about a number of stories. Maybe we'll jump from story to story, and then we'll land on something perhaps longer form along the way. First of all, because chronologically it was the last thing I added to Pocket, Talking Points memo discussing this morning where they get their news from, I don't know, but it's real. Okay. And as a matter of fact, this story that they're running first appeared at ProPublica. So I'll give you the headline of this one. This is what you need to know about Richard Burr and whether or not there was really insider trading going on. We forgot about Burr because everybody's been focusing on Kelly Loeffler, who's fairly obviously also engaged in insider trading as well, trying to buy some excuse for herself or some forgiveness for herself, as I understand it, in the public relations realm by flying supplies around on her private jet or something like that. Like, oh, they will forget about my profiteering if I use my private jet for something, even if it's a good thing. It really doesn't matter. Anyway, Burr, of course, in order to escape criminal liability, has insisted that no, I wasn't insider trading at all. The headline, I think, gives you the evidence you need to make your decision. The TPM headline being, on the same day that Senator Richard Burr dumped stock, so did his brother-in-law. Then the market crashed. So it's circumstantial evidence, but it's pretty strong circumstantial evidence. I didn't trade on inside information. I'm distanced from it. My broker does that. It's a blind trust, yada, yada. If the circumstantial evidence of his trading almost immediately after getting a briefing that said we're going to have these major supply chain problems coming up in these industrial sectors, and then seeing all those stock dumped and then the stock market crashing, right? You could say, well, I guess we could allow for the room that there's a possibility that it was a coincidence that they happened to have this briefing right at the time that his broker, who did not have the briefing, decided to sell all this stock. But the odds of the same incredible luck befalling his brother-in-law at the exact same moment seem statistically to be beyond explanation by coincidence, let's say. So, you want to cut through the red tape and the yellow caution tape as well here on the show. The answer is that Senator Richard Burr is guilty of insider trading and has broken the Stock Act and is trading illegally. So's Kelly Loeffler. So's Burr's brother-in-law. And again, no surprise. We don't want to wander into blood libel, but it's a family of traders. I mean, the original trader, Aaron Burr, actually related to this guy. There should really be no contest on this one. Even if it wasn't for Aaron, forget Aaron Burr. The evidence is pretty strong that he's doing this. And he was a trader before that when he was leaking confidential and important, sensitive information from the Intelligence Committee to the White House, when the Intelligence Committee was the one probing the White House's illegal activity running up to the impeachment situation. So, what do you want me to tell you? The guy should be rotting in prison. And I think we can all get behind that. All right. Next story that I wanted to offer up to you. Again, the overarching theme of the day that the Trump administration, and I put that in scare quotes, and their allies doing everything that they can to simply declare the pandemic to be over. You thought I was joking the day I passed on the tweet of Jared Kushner speaking to the press saying we've reached our milestones and we're done, and that was going to mean we told you there was going to be 60,000 deaths or thereabouts. There are your 60,000 deaths. from now on we're open and everything that happens afterwards is the fault of something else other than coronavirus. We're done with it. And in the meantime, what we've seen is the Trump-run federal government simply washing its hands, no pun intended, of everything having to do with responsibility for the virus. Not the blame, but responsibility. Like, we'll help states get PPE. We'll make sure that ventilators move from one area to the next as the problem moves from one area to the next. Why are we stopping from doing this? It's not just that we hate people and want them to die. It's also that there is no virus. It's not happening anymore. If we move ventilators around, then it sounds like we agree that the problem is moving from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut to Iowa and South Dakota and Nebraska. And it's not. It is, but we are going to say it's not, because if we say that it is, then it sounds like there's a problem. And if there's a problem, we're supposed to fix it. And we don't know how to fix anything. So if we're going to win this election, we're better off saying that there's no problems than that we are going to fix the problems, because we're not going to be able to do that. We're not interested in doing it. I don't know how to do it. The problem solving is not golf or watching the Gorilla Channel or drinking Diet Cokes. So I don't want to do it. So I said that their allies are doing the same. I happened to see this tweet, I think this morning. Let's see. A good friend of ours, I think everybody is following along with, John Whitehouse, Existential Fish, the news director in real life, at Media Matters for America, and in fake life, just our friend on Twitter, pointing out that Fox News still basically aligned with the president, although he keeps expressing his frustration with them because I guess they're not, tickling the right parts of him enough times during a day. So his new favorite is OANN, which, by the way, I understand this is the way it's portrayed in the media. Donald Trump Jr. making a play for, and that people aligned with Donald Trump Jr. are making a bid to buy either the entirety of or some controlling portion of OANN, so that they actually own the network, which is tickling the right parts of his dad's anatomy, which is kind of a gross thing to think about in a number of ways, but is just that much worse when it's your dad. But also, it raised questions in my mind when I saw the headlines put that way. Are people aligned with Donald Trump Jr.? Donald Trump Jr., of course, supposedly detached from politics, not a politician himself, firewall between him and his dad. He's running the business. How do you get aligned with a guy who there's no, what are you aligning with? It could just be the business angle that they're aligned with. Well, he doesn't have a business. He is part of his father's money and he's allowed to play with it. And, so there's no way to align yourself with Donald Trump Jr. that isn't aligning yourself with Donald Trump Sr. explicitly. But anyway, so I guess they're going to buy the thing. Hooray. Good for you. Fox News, in the meantime, John Whitehouse tells us, is basically done with coronavirus. So they're on the same page in the playbook, too. No indications in its top stories that over 70,000 people, it's going to be 75,000 within minutes. It already is, but the reports will reach it. No indications in its top stories that over 70,000 people have died. Instead, the pandemic is just a footnote in a couple of places. So I guess their front page is illustrated here by the screen grabs John provides for us. Schiff in panic mode, whatever that's supposed to mean. Exclusive Russia probe transcripts show officials came up empty on collusion. Sources say that's from like a year ago or whatever, but it's the headline today. Let's see. Graham tells Hannity DOJ docs show Mueller probe bogus from the start. We've got another one called Picked Wrong Plane. 3 Marines subdue unruly passenger on flight from Japan to Texas, although chances are he was a MAGA protester, but we could find out about that if we wanted to. Let's see. LeBron James weighing in on the absurd case that we haven't yet discussed at all, and I'm sorry that we haven't gotten to it, but the case of the shooting down in Georgia, and if I have the pronunciation of the first name right, I haven't been listening to TV news, so I haven't heard them pronouncing it. Is it Ahmaud? does it say Ahmaud? Well, Ahmaud, Ahmaud, Ahmaud Arbery, the Georgia man shot and killed while jogging. The video was all over social media yesterday. I don't know if you've seen the thing. I don't know how you could have avoided it. It's an absurd situation. And also, I have to beg for people to stabilize their cameras somehow when they're filming these things. All the critical parts where you just want to know how the hell did that happen are off camera because, where there's gunshots and people jump and they don't focusing on the action because they're scared to death, or I don't know what's motivating the people who are filming. I don't know how they start filming it. I'm sure you've seen the story, and I haven't dug that far into it, and you don't really have to. You just see the video and see what's going on here. But guy out for a jog, and I guess the excuse is the people who killed him, two white guys who were cruising around the neighborhood with guns for some unknown reason. That's just something you do in Georgia. And he went jogging past them, and I guess they told the cops, I guess, we thought he was a burglar. He wasn't carrying anything, no burglary tools. He wasn't on his way to a burglary. Not carrying any television sets or jewelry, so he wasn't on his way from a burglary. He was just a burglar in transit. And therefore, we need to brandish guns and stop him. But for some strange reason, two white guys in a pickup truck on the street at random, pointing guns at him and ordering him to stop, did not convince him that it was the right and safe thing to do, and he continued on his way. And, well, you know what happens when we're defied. We have the right to shoot anybody we want to, even though that's not really true. And apparently they're having difficulty getting a grand jury together to indict these guys because the prosecutors are like, well, people die every day. The coronavirus kills people. Shotguns kill people. Yeah, who's to, say who's to blame? Certainly there have been no more people murdered on this street than have died from the flu in a bad season. So really, is there anything to look at here? So that's what they're spending their time on over at Fox. That and, of course, the fact that LeBron James, I guess, has had some comment on it, and a reasonably good comment at that, but that outrages white people, so it makes the front page of Fox News. I guess LeBron James, the quote they pulled from him, the 3 words that they allowed him to actually be quoted as saying is, "We're literally hunted." Well, you are. That's correct and true, but this is offered up not for the truth of the matter asserted, but to make white people mad at LeBron James. So we'll see whether that works. And one other story that makes their front page, the fight between Axl Rose and Steve Mnuchin. Okay, well, we did mention that, and that's what Fox is spending its time on because there's no pandemic. Let's see. We'll probably skip this story for now, but Washington Post reporting on when Trump covered for China's alleged coronavirus cover-up. Important story, but a side story. It makes no logical sense. The upshot of it is it makes no logical sense for Donald Trump to blame the virus on China when he, in fact, defended their reaction to the outbreak of the pandemic in the early days of it. And so for him to change positions is inconsistent and illogical. Yeah, it is. And now what? I don't know. But we have documented here in the Washington Post. So, okay, good news for us. Another tidbit, I guess we'll just throw this out in the lightning round here. This sounds like a bad situation. In addition to the number of people who have fallen out the window in Russia for talking about the fact that they have no PPE there. Another prominent Russian has died, although in this case the report is that he died from COVID-19, and the reason that we're concerned about that is because this is the head of Russia's human spaceflight program, which, okay, that's an important sounding guy, and, you don't want anybody to die from COVID-19, but here's a prominent official. But there's more to it. He is the head of human spaceflight for Russia, but the problem is he's now dead of COVID-19. And last month, I guess we heard about his activities because last month he attended the launch of a 3-person crew to the International Space Station. So that's a problem because the 3 people who are now on the space station were relatively recently in contact with a guy who just now found out he's dead from COVID-19. And I guess there's some serious possibility that he may have passed it on to them and they'll come down with COVID-19 while in space. So, that seems like a rough situation. Maybe even a little tougher to deal with than being at sea on an aircraft carrier. I guess it's entirely possible that, I don't know. I don't know what kind of flexibility they have to say, yeah, we're going to kind of abort this mission and come back to Earth. Trump, of course, would say, no, you're not allowed to come back to Earth. You're going to have to live in quarantine until you die in space, whatever. But that seems like a bit of a pickle for the Russians in space. We'll see how that one works out. More news. This, too, I think easily predictable. And, in fact, I did predict it. And, hey, Mom, if you're listening, I told you this was going to happen. And I don't know. You sort of agreed. It depends on where you live, I suppose, in relation to the now open state of Georgia. I guess I think anybody reasonable probably would have predicted if you live anywhere close to the borders of Georgia and Georgia opens up, but your state, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama, doesn't open up and you're just itching for a tattoo, you might just head over the border to Georgia to go and get it. And I don't know why there was some skepticism about that possibility, but smartphone data shows that out-of-state visitors flocked to Georgia as restaurants and other businesses reopened. So even if you wanted to lie and pretend that we're opening Georgia because we meet all the criteria for opening here, and our infection rate is XYZ and falling, and our hospitalization rate's falling, and our death rate's falling for the requisite number of days in a row. None of this is true. And in fact, there's some reporting that none of this is true for any state in the United States. Georgia, not only is it not true for it, but they actually are showing the opposite, and their cases are rising. But they opened anyway because reasons. USA, Republican, Trump all the way, and that's science, or what passes for science now, and we're going to open. Well, even if your state doesn't open because you aren't showing those signs and you have a deadly pandemic raging like crazy through your population, the border, as it turns out, is a great vaccine and a great cleanser. Is there some way that maybe we could inject the border into people's lungs? Because I've seen the border just get rid of the coronavirus like that. Because apparently Georgia's open, and if you live in Alabama and are on your deathbed with COVID-19, if you cross the border into Georgia, you're good to go. So everything's cool, and that's what's happening. And the smartphones are giving us away on that one. I know the smartphones are spying on us and tracking us at all times. That's a separate complaint. I downloaded an app at some point that sounded like a really good idea that was being repurposed for, it was originally an app called Our Streets. Let's blame it right on them. And the idea was, I don't know if it was even necessary. Quite frankly, not a very good app idea, but whatever. Anybody can have an app, right? So they put out an app, and I guess the idea was if you see an unsafe driver or an unsafe situation in the streets of some kind that you want to report to other drivers, sort of like Waze became the new Google Maps for navigation by crowdsourcing information. I guess they thought that it was important or a feasible business model somehow that if you saw a guy who was driving recklessly or a traffic light that was flashing, you could report it, and then internet magic happens and that problem goes away. Or, others are alerted to the fact that 5 minutes ago there was a guy traveling 60 miles an hour in another direction who was here at that point and he's now gone, so you can avoid him in one of two ways. One, by going to exactly the place where it was reported that he was driving recklessly, because he's gone now, or whatever. I don't know what they were meaning to do with this. Anyway, they repurposed this app completely. And the only thing that made it interesting to me was they were having people crowdsource information on what was in the grocery stores they were visiting. Register yourself, register your grocery store, and tell us, do they have toilet paper? Do they have paper towels? Do they have meat and fresh vegetables? All the categories that people were looking for. So you could check, does my local grocery store have any toilet paper? If that's what I'm searching for and risking going out of the house for, I should know ahead of time, does my store have it? And if not, is there another store that does, so I can maximize my efficiency being out there? It's a good idea. Not a whole lot of people reporting stuff in my area. It didn't really help me very much. Haven't used it all that often as a result. However, anytime I go out of the house, go for a walk, whatever, it snitches on me, and I get back and my phone has an alert on it, and it's our Streets app asking me, did you go shopping today? Tell everybody what you saw, help your neighbors. No, I didn't go shopping. I went out for a walk. Leave me alone. Thought you were a smartphone. You don't know the difference between my going shopping and you know where by the way, you're a mapping app. You tell me, did I go shopping or not? Did I walk around the neighborhood? What do you know where I went? You can see where I went. You're spying on me as it is. If I go to a location that your app says is a grocery store, fair game. Ask me if I went shopping. If I go to what your app says is one of those little stations where you can get a plastic bag in case your dog poops, then no, I didn't go shopping. Don't ask me. It's very bad. It really has not worked very well. I don't recommend it, to be honest. But if you want to be pestered by your phone, then by all means, download that rather than a game. It's so much less fun and doesn't get anything done. So, that's the goal these days. Everything's on its head in this country. If you can be unproductive and hurt people, go for it. Let's see. I said to you that there was reporting that nobody is meeting the guidelines for opening, and I guess that's part of the reason why they are getting rid of the guidelines for opening. Business Insider reports under this headline, researcher testifies to Congress, and I thought they weren't allowed to do that anymore, that not a single state meets Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security criteria to reopen safely. But F that, is basically where we're at here. And you know how Business Insider does things. They got a bunch of bullet points. Maybe we can read those instead of the article. I don't know why they offer that as a possibility, but they do. As several U.S. states begin to lift lockdown measures, one expert says none of the states currently meet safety criteria that would warrant a reopening. Dr. Caitlin Rivers, a researcher from the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, told the House Appropriations Subcommittee, that's why she's allowed to testify. She's from Johns Hopkins, not the CDC. We have to privatize the CDC in order to allow people to testify now. So he told the House Appropriations Subcommittee, why they're interested, I'm not sure, on Wednesday that there are no states that currently meet all 4 safety criteria outlined by the center. Maybe we should read the article to see what those are, but I think we all get an idea. None of us are in the business of reopening states, so I don't necessarily have to tell you this. As of May 6th, that's yesterday, Georgia, South Carolina, and Montana have lifted restrictions, and others, including Texas, Maine, and Illinois, have partially reopened. About 65% of America's population is still under some form of lockdown, so I guess that's somewhat positive news in terms of keeping a lid on things, but I don't know. I guess it won't really help all that much in terms of containing things if 35% of the population is still milling about with no real reason to think that it's safe. One more tidbit I'll offer you before the break comes up. Just a little news, a minor headline. Colorado GOP Chair Ken Buck. Get these pop-ups out of my way. Ken Buck. And let me say, buck him. That's what I say. Colorado GOP Chair Ken Buck pressured local official to submit incorrect election results. Isn't that something? Just a little minor note there. Fellow Republican says Congressman tried to bully him into committing a crime. Conrad Swanson reporting this for the Denver Post. And, we'll do the quick hit on it before turning off the alarm and getting ready to play the music here. Colorado Republican Party Chair Ken Buck. He's, by the way, a United States representative, House of Representatives and all that, from Windsor, pressured a local party official to submit incorrect election results to set the primary ballot for a state Senate seat, according to an audio recording of a conference call obtained by the Denver Post. So it's on tape. That's good. Lordy, I hope there are tapes. I guess we'll do the long story short here. They had a primary election or something. One of their primary, the selection process for a state Senate seat, you have to get 30% of the vote in order to qualify for the ballot or something. We'll have to unravel this afterwards. But at any rate, I guess they had a convention by phone and decided that they wanted this guy on the ballot even though he only got 24%. And this guy was like, yeah, I don't think I should do that. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. I feel like maybe we ought to explain exactly what went on. It sounded confusing. So maybe we need to parse through, or just at least tear through, the Denver Post article on this. Let's see. So here's the deal. You've got a sitting congressman, a sitting state party chair, who is trying to bully a volunteer. This is the guy's story here. I'm a volunteer. I don't get paid for this. Into committing a crime. This is Eli Bremer, the GOP chairman for State Senate District 10, and he told this to the Denver Post on Wednesday, confirming the authenticity of the recording. To say it's damning is an understatement. It's damning, I guess we could say, by way of correct statement. Buck says he was merely asking Bremer to abide by a committee decision. And you could see room for disagreement about what to do here, but he kind of removes all doubt in the conversation. He was merely asking Bremer to abide by a committee decision. It's just that the committee wasn't empowered to make that decision. But it's more than that. The decision was, I would like you to possibly commit a crime to help us enforce this decision, which we should never have made. I'll just let them tell you the story. At issue is the Republican primary for the District 10 seat currently held by Senator Owen Hill, who is term limited. Here's another bad knock for term limits. It leads to dumb stuff like this. Okay. State Representative Larry Liston and Republican activist David Stiver both ran for this District 10 seat. To qualify for the November ballot via the caucus and assembly process, a candidate must receive 30% of the vote from Republicans within the district. Now, again, do they have off-year elections? I mean, this is to qualify for the November ballot. Are they not electing this state, voting for the state Senate seat in November of this year? I don't. That's the part I don't get. Why are there two Republicans qualifying for the ballot? They're not doing jungle primary thing here. I don't quite get what's going on, and our Colorado friends will have to tell us exactly what's going on. But this is what it says. To qualify for the November ballot via the caucus and assembly process, a candidate must receive 30% of the vote from Republicans within the district. During a district assembly in March, you can do things this way, Liston received 75% of the vote, which of course means that there isn't 30% of the vote available to Stiver, who got just 24% of the vote, according to documents filed later in Denver District Court. Stiver, though, complained that the election was unfair. Why? I don't know. He just did. And the issue was taken up with the State Central Committee, which is, I guess, who you would expect to take up the issue. I say this is unfair. Really? Let's look at it. Well, the State Central Committee actually agreed, again, for reasons unstated. We don't know. They might have had good reasons. And Buck, this is what Buck said in an interview on Wednesday. Maybe they didn't agree. Buck says they did, though, and we have that. The Central Committee consists of nearly 500 members, including elected officials and county officers. About 200 were on the line during an April 17th conference call, social distancing, in which the group voted to place Stiver on the ballot for the seat, even though he failed to receive 30% of the district's votes. I don't know what the guidelines say. I don't know what the rules and bylaws are, but, it wouldn't surprise me if it was possible that the rules reserved to the Central Committee the right to do something like this and to find, where we have the right, we're responsible for adjudicating these disputes. We find that Stiver's got a valid complaint. The way whatever it was conducted, wherein he only got 24% of the vote, was in fact unfair, and the only thing we can do about it is to say, that's it. We override the rule that says you got to have 30 to get on our ballot. We want you to put him on this ballot. And it's not a party ballot, though. It's a public ballot for the election. That's what I don't get about what's going on here. So the 200 or so members who showed up decided. That's who gets to decide, the people who show up. And so Buck asked Bremer, the District 10 chair, whether he would comply with the committee's decision to put Stiver on, even though he only got 24%, because of their finding of unfairness in the prior decision-making process, whatever it was. And then on tape we find, do you understand the order of the Executive Committee and the Central Committee that you will submit the paperwork to include Mr. Stiver and Mr. Liston on the ballot, with Mr. Liston receiving the top line vote? Buck said on the call. Yes, sir, I understand the Central Committee has adopted a resolution that requires me to sign a false affidavit to the state, Bremer replied. Yeah, sounds correct, right? And Buck says, and will you do so? Bremer responds, I will seek legal counsel, as I am being asked to sign an affidavit that states Mr. Stiver received 30% of the vote. I need to seek legal counsel to find out if I am putting myself in jeopardy of a misdemeanor for doing that. And Buck, his simple answer is, the answer here should be, well, wait a second. We're not asking you to commit a crime here. What we're saying is we've corrected things in a fashion that we think we're entitled by our bylaws to do. But instead, he just goes right at it. Buck says, and you understand that it is the order of the Central Committee that you do so. Right? Buck says, I want to talk to legal counsel because you're asking me to put myself in jeopardy of a misdemeanor by doing what you want. And Buck's answer is, you understand it's our order that you do so. Bremer, I will consult with counsel. Yes, sir, I understand the Central Committee has ordered me to sign an affidavit stating that a candidate got 30% who did not. And I will seek legal counsel and determine if I am legally able to follow that. Buck, all right, Mr. Bremer, I understand your position. We will now move on. Buck, a lawyer, told the Post on Wednesday that it has been the tradition in both parties for their committees to make such decisions. It might be. What I was asking Eli to do was not to commit a fraud. No, Republicans would never ask for that. I was asking Eli if he understood the decision of the Central Committee and if he was willing to follow the request of the Republican Central Committee, he said. It wasn't like I was asking him to do something because I have a personal stake in the process. That would never happen. The assembly process to select the District 10 candidates, carried out as the coronavirus was quickly spreading through the state, was flawed, Buck says. We have two choices, he said. we're going to allow an unfair election to stand, or we're going to require the chairman of the Senate district to put the candidate's name on the ballot and let the primary voters decide in November. I'm guessing that maybe they just have off-year elections. Do we know that? Haven't we discussed that with Travis at some point? Bremer never filed the paperwork. Okay. 3 days after the phone call, the district's vice chair filed a friendly lawsuit, Bremer said, to prevent him from doing so. Bremer told the court he had no position and would abide by its decision. I see. So the vice chair says, I'll tell you what, I'll help you out. I will sue to enjoin you from executing the affidavit because you think it's incorrect. And I think it's incorrect, and I'll help you out. I'll sue to stop you from doing it. And you say, gosh, I hope you don't win your suit. That's the friendly lawsuit. District Court Chief Judge Michael Martinez ruled Monday that any certificate of designation filed with the Secretary of State's office showing Stiver as a candidate would violate state law because he did not receive at least 30% of the district's votes. The state Republican Party appealed the case to the Colorado Supreme Court, which declined Tuesday to hear it. So Wednesday, they said, screw all of that and do it the way I want. And he recorded it. State party spokesman Joe Jackson expressed disappointment in the Supreme Court's decision, predicting it will set a new precedent in which the courts will be inundated with political fights every 2 years. But the April 17th conversation struck Colorado politics expert Seth Maskett as brazen. The political science professor at the University of Denver said it's also likely an uncommon occurrence. There are plenty of examples within Colorado and elsewhere of party leaders pressuring subordinates to sort of fudge results or to change their views on things, but it's very rare you see someone directly ordering someone to commit a crime, Maskett said. The aftermath is likely problematic for both Buck and the state Republican Party, Maskett said, but also potentially for Buck as a member of Congress, he said. This is something his colleagues probably don't think highly of. I doubt that. I think they think it's funny and cool and awesome and they should all do it. But I can't imagine it's about to flip his district blue or anything like that. It should lead to his resignation. But by the way, again, here, if you're looking for election fraud, check the Republican Party. It's happening all the time. Those are the guys who do it. North Carolina, changing the absentee ballots, stuffing the ballot boxes as necessary. This guy in Colorado, Joe Webb, former chair of the Jefferson County Republican Party, said he counted the votes for the District 10 race, and Buck's comments angered him so badly that he hung up the phone. Eli was being asked, and this is very serious, to attest to something as true when he knew it was false, Webb said. There's a word for that in legal jargon. It's called perjury. Buck, a former district attorney, so he couldn't possibly be committing any crimes, should have known better, Webb said. The entire ordeal was disheartening and would not have happened if the coronavirus hadn't forced the party's assemblies into truncated timelines, Webb said. True, but you can't really blame it on that. Bremer said the court rulings were vindications for him and Buck's actions were a betrayal. At a minimum, Bremer said, Buck owes him an apology. And if I have the timeline right here, the phone call happens after the court rulings. How in the heck is the Republican Party going to go out and say we're for the rule of law except when it applies to us? We can do whatever we want to, Bremer said. That's not my Republican Party. Well, sadly, it is, and you should realize it, and you should quit the Republican Party. But first, purge it of people who are too overt about things like Buck. And but you're gonna have to find a new home, guy. That is your Republican Party. Sorry. All right. Let's see a couple of other stories. Again, more for the overriding theme. We have the New York Times and other papers reporting on the now overt move by the White House to simply say, we're moving on. We're no longer focusing on the medical issue. We're going to do only economic recovery. Of course, they are inextricably intertwined, but they're going to just pretend that they're not. I mean, I think we all kind of get it inherently. You know, we all inherently understand that if you just say, hey, the economy's open and force the issue, and then everybody just gets sick and then nobody can go to work, and it's not because the offices are closed by order of the governor, but the fact that no one can come to work because they're not healthy enough, or you don't have enough people to do the things you need to do, whether it's run the factory or run the office or teach the classes. Sick people are sick and dead people are dead, and that's all there is to it. And it doesn't matter whether you order it to be otherwise. And what we're going to end up with is the economic hit of having closed for several months without any of the rebound, plus the no benefit from things medically either. We're going to have another huge outbreak and a damaged economy damaged further, because you can't just will this thing to happen. The Times going with the headline, Trump's new coronavirus message, time to move on to the economic recovery. Subheader, the president's cure can't be worse than a disease logic, and they should have put that in scare quotes, is clear. As bad as the virus may be, the cost of virtual national lockdown has grown too high. I see our good friend Ian Reifowitz pulling out a story from Newsday, another of the New York area newspapers, and his pull from this thing is Trump actually said, quote, in a way, by doing all this testing, we make ourselves look bad. He's more worried about himself looking bad than the pandemic actually being bad and getting worse. That's really the main thrust of all this stuff. It's just like it was with the Diamond Princess cruise ship. He didn't want the numbers to be on him, so he just preferred to do the science of trying to decide what's safe and what's not without any data. Data's embarrassing. It's better to just go with our gut. Anyway, I always say my gut's better than any scientific basis for anything. But in addition to that, even if you don't believe that, the real point is that data makes my election chore harder. So we'll go with my gut, because I can just say whatever I want. I'm in charge of my gut, and my election picture will just look rosier as a result. All right. Well, there's a couple more, I guess, data points about this. There's, of course, the CDC story. There's, I wanted to, I guess one more angle on this is stylistic. We'll give Jonathan Chait a chance to use his New York piece to give some color to this. Trump is about to go full coronavirus death denier. In addition to saying testing hurts us because it tells us how many people have the disease, and the more people who have the disease, the worse I look, because it was my responsibility to keep those numbers down. Same thing with deaths as well. During the initial stages of the coronavirus outbreak, the Trump administration believed the media was exaggerating the virus in order to scare people and hurt Trump's polling. Chief function of the CDC, as everyone knows. The reason they are paying so much attention to it today is that they think it's going to bring down the president, said then Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney. Remember when he was Chief of Staff? Seems like a year ago. Later, they insisted the media was exaggerating the economic contraction. Trump has repeatedly floated predictions for the number of deaths from the pandemic that were quickly exceeded by reality. So every aspect of this has been denied at some point by the White House. It's not as serious as they say. Yes, it is as serious. Well, the economic impact isn't as big as they say. Yes, it is. It's that and bigger. Well, the deaths aren't as high as it. Yes, they are, and larger. Well, maybe it'll be 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, 200,000. The next step, reports Axios, will be to begin publicly questioning the listed totals of coronavirus deaths. Trump has vented that the numbers seem inflated, it reports, as have several people around him who believe the same. This is not just a matter of public spin, like Trump's campaign to pressure the news media into reporting that his tiny inauguration crowd was larger than it was. That, too, by the way, wasn't a matter of spin. It was a matter of he's lying and he's crazy and he's insane and he cannot be permitted to control the federal government or we will all be killed. But, we normalized it. That's the problem we keep complaining of. Anyway, the news source he trusts, Fox News, has been running hours of programming questioning the death totals. One Fox theory has seized on changes to the official tabulation by the CDC. I'm sure you've run into this on social media. Trolls keep saying, the CDC revised its numbers. It's only half. Only 30,000 people have died. And there was a whole explanation as to why that's not actually the case. There's an explanation for what's behind it. But what you need to know is that's not actually the case. But anyway, that's one Fox theory. Another misinterprets the categorization of pneumonia deaths. Axios reports that Trump himself has repeated yet another theory, which raises questions about an increase in previously uncategorized nursing home deaths in New York. All of these theories are pure crankery. Indeed, the official recorded death count is lower, not higher, than the actual coronavirus death toll. People who die at home from the virus without receiving medical attention have not been included in the official totals, but the fact that Trump and his allies have developed so many different pseudo-statistical objections shows how desperate they are to cast doubt on the official numbers. The propaganda campaign has worked. The percentage of frequent Fox News watchers who believe that the official coronavirus death counts are exaggerated has risen from 45% last month to 61% this month. Trump is a devoted member of the Fox News audience. What's more, he believes everybody is as dishonest as he is. The deep state would like to defeat Trump, and embarrassing Trump by publishing death tolls higher than Trump predicted would make Trump look bad. So, of course, they're cooking the books. Inventing fake statistics to support his goal is exactly what Trump would do. So, naturally, he believes it's being done against him. The unstated conclusion, he's sick, unstable, and a threat to national security and your individual right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, but let's just limit it to life for now. It's him or you. Somebody's got to go. I won't say how they got to go, but when it's up to him, his choice for you, death. Now you are at a disadvantage. You're just a citizen. You're not allowed to talk about things like the president of the United States should die. You can't say that, you can say that. You can't say that he should be killed. That's bad news. You're not supposed to say that. But you can say things like, the way I put it is what should happen is he should fall down the steps on the way off of Air Force One and break his neck and die. That should happen. If you really want, if you want karma or anything, he should get coronavirus and die. But it would be a lot faster if he fell down the stairs and died that way. There are even faster ways. Or there are, somewhat, perhaps legal mechanisms. I guess you could arrest him. I know people say you can't indict a sitting president, but you can. That's wrong, which means you can arrest them, and it could be a capital crime, and you can execute him. That's perfectly legal. And people will say, no, you're not allowed to talk about that. But that's a legal process. I am allowed to talk about that. If he's given due process of law and a jury of his peers finds him guilty and he's sentenced in a capital crime to execution, then what's the problem? It's not an issue. It's totally illegal. It's unprecedented. We haven't done it in this country, but, I'm just trying to even the playing field here, right? He's allowed to say that his preferred outcome for you is your death. There's only a limited window available for you within which you can discuss things on equal terms. He's trying to kill you, but you're not allowed to try to kill him back. But you are allowed to try to legally impose capital punishment on him. That's within your rights, and I guess you can still talk about it. But why would you? Because he's trying to kill you, and these are the ways. I'm just telling you the stories that tell you the many ways in which he's trying to kill you. Another rather stylized retelling of some of the things that are going on. One of the whistleblowers that we haven't talked explicitly about today, though Greg mentioned him yesterday, Dr. Rick Bright, who should get together with Larry Brilliant and work together. The Rick Bright's whistleblower complaint on Trump's effed HHS coronavirus response will leave you shook. We are reliably assured by Evan Hurst at Wonkette. We always like the Wonkette retelling of things. They're much more entertaining. A couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump's Department of Health and Human Services fired Dr. Rick Bright, who was America's very qualified chief of vaccines and a pandemic expert. Fired him from his job by shunting him over to a lesser job at the National Institutes of Health. Until that demotion, he had been the director of the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, that's BARDA, that everyone's talking about, and Deputy Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response at HHS. He was fired, according to his statement, because he, a scientist expert, refused to go along with the administration's obsession with promoting Trump's favorite malaria drug, hydroxy. Here's your Wonkette style working here. Hydroxy boner cream 3000. It's a good one, Evan. Everyone knows it's hydroxychloroquine and or whatever it is. Well, he refused to go along with promoting this stuff as the miracle cure for the novel coronavirus. Specifically, he wrote that contrary to misguided directives, I limited the broad use of chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine promoted by the administration as a panacea, but which clearly lack scientific merit because Fox News and Rudy Giuliani and President Mouth Lies wouldn't stop lying to the American people about it. The last part, of course, is not part of the quote. According to Bright's lawyer, Deborah Katz, when they offered him his cool new job, which he has not started and may not even technically exist, they were like, oh, you're just a victim of your own success. Boy, have we got a special mission for you. They lied to Bright and told him his transfer was part of a bold new plan to defeat the coronavirus, one that apparently did not include him standing in the way of Trump throat-cramming your Nana with hydroxyboner cream 3000. Then they started lying about him, smearing him like a common Marie Yovanovitch, because everything in Trump world is the same all the time. Now, Dr. Bright has filed an official whistleblower complaint. It is, well, they use the F word here. I won't, though I'm being urged to do so. You thought there was incompetence on Jared Kushner's Power Ranger volunteer strike force for PPE procurement? Ha! Well, check out what's happening at HHS, according to Rick Bright. We're going to have to do this one fast. Bright's supervisor was a guy named Dr. Robert Kadlec, the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, or ASPR, who answers directly to HHS Secretary Alex Azar. In the complaint, Bright accuses Kadlec of abuse of authority and censorship and mismanagement, of waste of funds, and just generally acting in a way that's a substantial and specific danger to public health. Is Dr. Kadlec the Zodiac killer who canceled Arrested Development? We don't know, but maybe. Bright's lawyer writes in the complaint that Bright clashed with Kadlec, it's Kadlec, could be Kadlec, starting around 2018 when Bright started to notice rampant cronyism taking precedence over science at BARDA, but says it got really bad when COVID-19 hit. Allegations of cronyism in Bright's whistleblower complaint go all the way back to 2017, though. There's a specific situation involving a pharma lobbyist named John Clarici, strong-arming Bright into continuing a contract with a pharma company called Aeolus, even though it was a bad contract, because, you'll never guess, the CEO of the company, John McManus, was friends with Jared. Sounds like Clarici was just casually mafia-threatening Bright by suggesting the CEO might have had stories about Bright put in the newspaper if he stood in the way of the cash. And there was an issue in 2018 involving the same lobbyist and Bright's objections to spending $40 million on a crap influenza drug from a company that guy repped, instead of another drug that Dr. Bright recommended that was better, according to science. So much more, much of which appears to involve Dr. Kadlec and Mr. Clarici. Let's go to the coronavirus stuff. S-word, though. Here, and then the murders began, kind of literally, we guess. And from the complaint, they have this capture here. Once the COVID-19 pandemic hit, Dr. Bright became even more alarmed about the pressure that Dr. Kadlec and other government officials were exerting on BARDA to invest in drugs, vaccines, and other technologies without proper scientific vetting or that lacked scientific merit. Dr. Bright objected to these efforts and made clear that BARDA would only invest the billions of dollars allocated by Congress to address the COVID-19 pandemic in safe and scientifically vetted solutions, and it would not succumb to the pressure of politics or cronyism. not doing politics or cronyism. How does that get Rudy Giuliani's butt wet? It doesn't. Yeah, well, you gotta love the Wonkette approach to everything. The complaint states that HHS leveled baseless criticisms at Bright for trying to fight for an actual vaccine and procure actual PPE, and then retaliated against him for refusing to go along with their plan to flood states with unproven Trump miracle drug hydroxyboner cream 3000 from Pakistan and India, which had not been inspected by the FDA. When the Trump administration was just pretty sure Bright was the source for an article about how the hydroxys are actually not good, he was a source and acted as one because nobody else would listen and people were effing dying. They fired him. Katz explains that in early January, Bright and others HHS scientists knew how dangerous this coronavirus was, despite how Secretary Azar was telling Trump and everybody else that it was fine, just fine. And of course, it all gets worse from here. But you can entertain yourself by reading it, the rest of the article, which is rather lengthy and surprising and shocking in Wonkette. It's time now, though, for me to turn things over to Justice Putnam to tell you what other shocking things he's uncovered and will share with you on his show, The West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, coming up next. Let's see if we can pick one or two out here. The White House press secretary called oversight of pandemic funds a publicity stunt, while Trump's Lincoln Memorial stunt was, of course, essential government business. So there goes the whole thing about her not lying to you. You knew that wasn't true.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waltman.
Here's some more good news for the post office. A stalwart Trump ally has been named Postmaster General. So, as Justice warns you, you can say goodbye to that Prime package and your mail-in ballot. So good luck trying to get rid of this guy the peaceful way. We'll see whether he falls down the steps anytime soon. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. Maybe Justice will have a story next.